Good morning. I'm happy to introduce Kathleen Decker-Zakis from Cape Elizabeth United Methodist Church in Cape Elizabeth, Maine. A small congregation that is trying to be the church of the future, which is an awesome direction. Kathleen's been in ministry for 10 years or so, 8 to 10 years, after some other careers, including Air Force officer and cartographer, which I find very fascinating, but not really relevant. So, Kathleen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be with you. Glad to meet you. Glad to be part of this.
Yes, great. Well, let's just jump right in. A little background, how did you get involved with the Cornelius Corps, hear about it, and start working with the programs and processes?
Yeah, I think as like most of us here in Maine, our connection came through Karen Munson, who had a long-term relationship with Jim Nelson, and Karen invited us to meet with Jim. And he came up and did a training day, a ministry day for laity and clergy. This was 2018. Mm-hmm. And out of that initial group, we started a missional covenant group, and he facilitated for us for a year. And it was this was pre-COVID, but we did it all on video call like this. So we did that from the beginning because we're scattered. Members of the group were scattered all over Maine, and Jim obviously was not in Maine.
Right.
And so that was a great formative experience, and that group continues. It's been 4.5 years. There's 2 of us who were original members. Mm-hmm. Some people have left and some people have joined us, but I met with them this morning. It's an ongoing, every week, 90-minute gathering that has been a really powerful shaping force for the works that each of us are doing. Right now, we're all United Methodist clergy. Okay. And in different parts of the state, in different small churches mostly. And the pattern that he introduced us to of coming together and reading scripture and praying and silence and study and mission, right. That pattern we have kept, and it's been formative. Yeah, it's been great.
What's the missional call of this group? So
it has evolved a little bit, but it is Methodist. It's how to be Methodists in Maine at this time of day. for this time, how to be. Maine is one of the least churched states in the United States. Has really low church participation, also has really low spiritual interest, if you talk about the nuns. Yes. So we do feel like we're missional outposts for the Christian gospel, because it is not necessarily, churches aren't necessarily looked upon as a social good. And so it's, but we're all interested in how do we sustain a faith community? How do we be the faith community that Christ is calling us to be for next year and 5 years from now and 20 years from now?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least part of that mission is a very good context. There's a who involved and a what, so it's very focused, which is great. Yeah. As you so it sounds like Jim's no longer facilitating, right? Correct. So he's kind of
he's released us.
The bird's out of the nest, so to speak.
That's right. That's right.
How is Cornelius Corps then supporting you now as your team begins to say, hey, we're going to take these practices and expand them for our mission?
Right. So we do refer back to some of the training materials that Jim had brought to us in the first place. We've gone to the website and we get his newsletter. I don't know if everyone in the group does, but several of us do. And that comes up, and his focus on racial justice is a good wake-up call for us, a good reminder. He has a way of informing and connecting it to our lives of faith.
Right.
And that is really helpful. So there's that connection.
Great.
And then there's several threads here, because I was also part of the neighborhood seminary, the 2 years where Jim was the spiritual director for us, and I was one of the facilitators of a spiritual formation group. Okay. And so I got to meet with him twice a month for that. And his teaching and the things that he brought to that group, and that was a class for certified lay ministers, so all laity who are being trained. And that group, they graduated from neighborhood seminary in June, right. But my small group is still meeting every month.
Got it.
So it's the way he has invited us to be together and to be in community with one another is something that once people participate, we don't want to stop. Right. Because it's fruitful. It's fruitful, and God is present and alive, and that's something we can't get enough of.
So if I understand correctly, you have a clergy group help you in your own peer work for the state of Maine, so to speak. Yeah. But you also have this lay group. Yes. Where you're part of that.
Right. And I mostly as a facilitator, I participate, but I am still more kind of a facilitator role for them. Yeah.
But nevertheless,
they are still
moving forward, and you become the Jim Nelson of that group. And keep it going, right?
Right. If you're talking about extending the ministry, then that is certainly a way. And several of the other people in our clergy group have done groups within their churches, within their congregations. It takes commitment. It's high commitment. Mm-hmm. It takes people who want to go deep in their faith and deep in their listening to the Spirit, and then commitment to act on it.
Yes.
And to go outward. So it's not just the inward, but the outward. Yes. Definitely took the together.
Together, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's a great statement. I mean, people I know that are in mission groups, including me, and if you have to sum it up, you lie because it works. It's a good summary. How has it influenced your work or the congregation or the extension of the work at Cape Elizabeth? I know you've only been there maybe a year or so, but it seems like this would have come with you for sure.
Yes, it has come with me. And we do not yet have a mission group at the church. We've talked about it. It's not, and we may someday.
Right.
But we have the inward outward together is definitely a phrase that people recognize and are familiar with. And when I was appointed there in 2021, they were already familiar with Jim because he had been a guest preacher for them.
I see.
And so it is, there's many threads that braid together. Yeah. For someone who lives so far away, Jim Nelson is very present. And the Cornelius Corps.
That's amazing.
So the ability to have the language to talk about really concisely what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to be the church. We're trying to be Christ's church. And a really easy way to talk about what that means is just by saying inward, outward, together, right? We need to pay attention to all of those things. And so that has been in my first year. I was co-pastor for 1 year and then solo pastor now. That it's guiding where we're trying to go, right?
That's
what
awesome.
We're paying attention to.
Right.
And, yeah.
Right. And the hard part is, the integration of those three,
right.
versus the silos of
Right.
of those three.
And
But
we each have kind of our favorites, right? Or the ones we're more naturally
that way.
inclined, or we're more gifted, or what we've associated church with traditionally.
Right.
And so it's trying to get a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I understand.
Yep.
Well, perfect, Kathleen. Thank you so much. It's just so awesome to hear about this outpost of the Cornelius Corps that's sort of taking root. And if I understand you correctly, not necessarily a geographic center of it. It's just kind of got some nodes and hubs all over that are each sort of doing their own thing. Is that a good description?
I would say yes. That's
awesome. Well, thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your work. Thanks for your deep commitment to your own mission, to your own call, and just thrilled to hear that the practices and the way Cornelius Corps approaches is the future, really, and how Christ works through people. That you've just taken it on, and it's part of who you are. That's super inspiring.
It is. A God thing for sure.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time.
God bless.